Hey everyone, dive in. We're tackling Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad today, and let me tell you, this book is like that friend who drops truth bombs at a party.
It's definitely sparked a lot of debate.
Oh, yeah.
And for good reason. Kiyosaki doesn't just want you to manage money, he wants you to question everything you've been taught about it.
Exactly. So we're diving deep into excerpts from the book itself to unlock those core wealth-building lessons and figure out what's going to be most impactful for you.
And the way Kiyosaki sets this up is fascinating. He introduces us to these two father figures in his life, his own father, the poor dad, and his friend's dad, the rich dad, two totally different perspectives on money.
It's like this constant tug of war between two financial philosophies, and young Kiyosaki is caught in the middle. Talk about a masterclass in critical thinking, right?
Absolutely. And this clash of viewpoints really comes alive in how each dad views a house. The poor dad, a highly educated man, believed that owning a house was the investment, the ultimate sign of success.
Which is what we're all conditioned to believe, right?
Yeah.
But then Rich Dad throws a curveball.
A total curveball. He saw a house as a liability. Think about it. Mortgage payments, property taxes, upkeep, it's money constantly flowing out of your pocket.
It's funny how something we're told is an investment can actually be the opposite. It's like Kiyosaki wants to shake us awake and say, hey, don't just blindly accept what you've been told.
Exactly. And this leads into one of his most important lessons. Work to learn, don't work for money. It's not enough to just climb the corporate ladder. You need to understand how money works, how to make it work for you.
And he doesn't just preach this, he lived it. Remember the story about working for his rich dad as a kid for like 10 cents an hour? Talk about a crash course in the value of unconventional education.
Right. It wasn't about the pennies. It was about the principles. His rich dad wanted him to experience the reality of trading time for money so he'd be hungry to create his own path.
So it was about pushing him to see that financial success is about understanding leverage, not just hard work. Now, this leads us to one of Kiyosaki's biggest contributions, the difference between assets and liabilities.
He really hammers this home, and for good reason. Most people misunderstand this, especially when it comes to that house example we talked about earlier.
Okay, so break it down for us. What makes something an asset versus a liability in the Kiyosaki verse?
It's all about cash flow. An asset puts money in your pocket while a liability takes money out. That rental property generating passive income. Asset. That fancy car losing value every year. Liability.
And the house. He actually uses a diagram in the book to illustrate this.
He does. It's a powerful visual that shows how those seemingly small expenses like mortgage interest and property taxes add up, often making a house more of a liability than an asset, at least from a purely financial standpoint.
That's a real eye-opener. And it ties into another core concept, minding your own business. Now, before anyone runs out and quits their day job,
Right, it's not quite that literal. Kiyosaki isn't necessarily anti-job, but he emphasizes that true financial freedom comes from building assets that generate income outside of that paycheck. It's about having your money work for you, not just the other way around.
it reminds me of that story he tells about Ray Kroc, the McDonald's guy.
Oh, that's a great one. When asked about his business, Kroc famously said he was in the real estate business, not the hamburger business. See, he understood that the true assets were the prime locations of those franchises, not just the burgers themselves.
That's thinking like a true entrepreneur, spotting the underlying value, the invisible engine driving the wealth.
Exactly. And this leads us to an area where Kiyosaki ruffles some feathers, the power of corporations. Now, before anyone grabs their pitchforks.
Because it's easy to hear corporations and think, oh no, not another lecture on the evils of big business.
Right. But Kiyosaki isn't demonizing corporations. He's saying that when used strategically, they can be powerful tools for building wealth, especially when it comes to taxes.
He even dives into the history of taxes, which sounds dry, but it's actually fascinating stuff.
It is. He argues that understanding how taxes were introduced and how the wealthy use corporations to their advantage is crucial for anyone who wants to build significant wealth. It's about leveling the playing field, not avoiding the rules altogether.
It's like learning the language of a new country. You might be able to get by with basic phrases, but to truly thrive, you need to understand the nuances, the subtleties.
And that's what Kiyosaki is trying to equip us with, the financial literacy to understand these powerful tools and potentially use them to our advantage.
Now, another concept that Kiyosaki highlights, and one that I think really captures the imagination, is this idea of inventing money. And I'm assuming we're not talking about building a money printing machine in our basement.
Definitely not. It's about using financial intelligence and creativity to spot opportunities that others miss. It's about seeing potential where others see problems and then taking action.
He illustrates this with the example of buying a foreclosed house at a bargain price and flipping it for a profit.
It's classic Kiyosaki, bold, action-oriented, and a little bit contrarian.
But inventing money goes beyond real estate. He encourages thinking outside the box, taking calculated risks, and being open to new and unconventional ways to generate wealth.
He wants us to develop that entrepreneurial mindset, that ability to see possibilities where others see obstacles. But of course, he acknowledges that this path isn't always smooth sailing. He dedicates a significant portion of the book to outlining the roadblocks that often trip people up on their journey to financial freedom.
Obstacles like, because I have a feeling we've all hit a few of these on our own journeys.
Oh, absolutely. He dives into 5 major ones: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. Those are some pretty universal roadblocks right there.
They really are, and they can manifest in so many different ways, from hesitating to invest,
Yeah.
to making impulsive purchases, to just plain old giving up.
It's like Kiyosaki is holding up a mirror, forcing us to confront those inner voices that hold us back. So how do we tackle these roadblocks? Because I think we've all been stuck at the fear station a time or two.
Well, with fear, Kiyosaki uses a powerful analogy, the story of the Alamo. Those soldiers knew the odds were stacked against them, but they chose to face their fears head-on, even in the face of likely defeat.
It's about courage over comfort, right?
Mhm.
Choosing to act despite the fear, not in the absence of it. Exactly. It's about recognizing that fear is a natural part of the process, but it doesn't have to control us. And then he reminds us that even when we stumble and fall, which we all do, there's immense value in learning from those failures.
Because failure is just feedback, right? It's data that helps us refine our approach. In fact, Kiyosaki shares a quote from John D. Rockefeller, who famously said, "I always tried to turn every disaster into an opportunity."
I love that. It's that entrepreneurial spirit of seeing setbacks as stepping stones. Now, cynicism, that's another biggie. Kiyosaki sees cynicism as a form of fear, a way of protecting ourselves from potential disappointment.
But like building walls around our hearts.
Right. Keeps out the bad, but also keeps out the good. Precisely. And Kiyosaki argues that this kind of negativity bias can be incredibly expensive. Cynical people often miss out on incredible opportunities because they're too busy focusing on what could go wrong.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you can't, you probably won't. He tells a story about a friend who was deeply cynical about real estate investing, always finding reasons why it wouldn't work, until he shifted his perspective.
And that's the key. His friend went from criticizing opportunities to analyzing them, looking at the numbers and seeing the potential. He went from no way to show me how.
That's such a powerful mindset shift. It reminds me of that quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. And that brings us to laziness, which I think Kiyosaki defines a bit differently than most. He's not just talking about physical laziness, but mental laziness. The unwillingness to think critically, to learn new things, to push ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
It's the "I'll Google it later" or "someone else will deal with it" mentality. It's about taking the easy route, even if it leads to a dead end.
And he argues that this type of laziness often stems from a lack of purpose, a lack of a clear vision for our lives.
So it's not really about being lazy, it's about lacking direction, right? Like a ship without a rudder, just drifting aimlessly.
Exactly. And this ties back to his core message about financial freedom being about choices. It's not about being lazy, it's about having the freedom to choose how we spend our time and energy, to design a life that aligns with our values.
Now, bad habits, those are sneaky little devils, aren't they? We all have them.
We do. And Kiyosaki doesn't sugarcoat this. He emphasizes the importance of identifying those ingrained patterns that sabotage our financial success and consciously replacing them with positive ones.
It's about recognizing those self-defeating tendencies,
Yeah.
not beating ourselves up over them. Like, what's one bad habit he specifically calls out? Because I'm sure we can all relate.
He talks extensively about the habit of spending more than you earn. It's so common, yet so detrimental. It keeps people trapped in a cycle of debt and financial stress.
It's that "I deserve this" mentality that leads to impulse purchases and a constant feeling of never having enough.
Exactly. And breaking free from that cycle requires a conscious effort to track our spending, to distinguish between wants and needs, to prioritize long-term financial well-being over short-term gratification.
It's about delaying gratification, which I know is easier said than done, but ultimately so much more rewarding.
Now, the last obstacle Kiyosaki addresses is arrogance. And this one can be tricky because it often masquerades as confidence.
It's like that saying, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing.
Exactly. Kiyosaki argues that arrogance often stems from a lack of self-awareness, a belief that we already know everything, which closes us off from learning and growth.
It's like wearing blinders. You might think you're seeing everything, but you're missing the bigger picture.
He stresses the importance of humility, of being open to new information, new perspectives, even when they challenge our existing beliefs. He often quotes his rich dad who would say, "What I don't know is not important."
That's a profound statement. It's about focusing on continuous learning, on surrounding ourselves with people who challenge us to grow.
Precisely. And this is where mentors come in. Kiyosaki is a huge advocate for finding mentors, people who have already achieved what we aspire to, who can guide us and shorten our learning curve.
That's like having a financial Sherpa, helping us navigate the treacherous terrain and avoid costly mistakes.
Exactly. And he doesn't just stop at mentors. He also stresses the importance of continuous learning, whether it's reading books, attending seminars, or simply staying curious and engaged with the world around us.
Because the financial landscape is always changing, right?
Yeah.
What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
Absolutely. He wants us to be lifelong learners, always adapting, evolving, and expanding our financial knowledge and skill set.
Okay, so we've explored these major obstacles, but I think a lot of listeners are probably wondering, where do I even begin? How do I translate these big picture concepts into concrete actions?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And thankfully, Kiyosaki provides a ton of practical advice on how to get started. He emphasizes taking action, even small steps, to build momentum and gain confidence.
It's that just do it mentality, right? Don't overthink it, just start somewhere.
Exactly. He encourages readers to start small, to experiment, to embrace the learning process, even if it involves making a few mistakes along the way.
And he even provides those really specific to-dos, which you'll love.
He does. He talks about the importance of finding a good property manager if you're investing in real estate so you're not bogged down with the day-to-day headaches.
So you can focus on the bigger picture, the strategic decisions.
Precisely. He also talks about the importance of making offers on properties, even if they seem too low, and being willing to walk away if the deal isn't right. It's about being proactive, not waiting for opportunities to fall into your lap.
And he backs this up with real-life examples, like how he once bought a house for a ridiculously low price simply by being willing to pay cash.
He's a big believer in the power of cash. But he also emphasizes the importance of learning to manage money effectively before investing it. He actually recommends using play money to practice investing and experimenting with different strategies without risking real capital.
It's like having a financial simulator, allowing you to test different scenarios and gain experience without the fear of real-world losses.
Exactly. He wants you to build your confidence and develop your instincts before diving headfirst into the deep end. Now, another critical piece of advice he offers is the importance of paying yourself first.
Which sounds a little counterintuitive, right? Don't we usually pay everyone else first? The bills, the rent, that daily latte?
We do. But Kiyosaki argues that by prioritizing our own financial well-being, by automatically setting aside a portion of our income for savings and investments, we're establishing a foundation for long-term financial success.
It's like building that emergency fund that everyone always talks about, that financial cushion that allows us to weather storms and pursue opportunities without derailing our progress.
He stresses that this isn't about being selfish. It's about recognizing that we can't help others if we're constantly struggling to keep our own heads above water.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask before helping others on an airplane. You have to secure your own well-being before you can effectively assist those around you.
Now, beyond managing our own money, Kiyosaki highlights the importance of finding a good broker, someone who understands our goals, our risk tolerance, and who's committed to acting in our best interests. He advises against simply going with the first broker you meet or making decisions based solely on flashy marketing materials.
It's about doing your due diligence, right? Interviewing potential brokers, understanding their fees, their track record, their investment philosophy.
Exactly. It's about finding a trusted advisor who aligns with your values and who you feel comfortable working with long term.
And he doesn't just stop at brokers. Kiyosaki also emphasizes the importance of surrounding ourselves with what he calls smart people.
By smart people, he means individuals who are knowledgeable in areas where we might lack expertise. People who challenge us to think differently and who can provide valuable insights and guidance.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And in fact, it's often beneficial to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us in certain areas.
Exactly. It's about leveraging the collective intelligence of a group, tapping into diverse perspectives and experiences to make more informed decisions.
He calls this organizing smart people. And it reminds me of that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. It's about seeking out mentors, advisors, and peers who can help us grow and achieve our full potential.
Now, another concept that Kiyosaki emphasizes, and one that I find particularly intriguing, is this idea of being an Indian giver.
Yes. It might sound a bit odd at first, but it's actually a powerful principle rooted in reciprocity.
He uses the example of Native Americans who would give a gift, like a blanket, to a settler who was cold, but then they would expect that gift to be returned at some point. It wasn't just a one-way transaction.
Exactly. It was about understanding that giving and receiving are part of a natural cycle, a continuous flow of energy and resources.
And Kiyosaki believes that this principle applies to the world of finance as well.
He does. He argues that if we want to receive, we must first give. He encourages readers to be generous with their time, their knowledge, their resources, and to see giving not as a depletion, but as an investment in building relationships and creating opportunities.
It's about creating a win-win situation where both parties benefit from the exchange.
And he shares a story about how he got a fantastic deal on a property by simply helping out a government employee who worked in the tax land office.
It's a perfect illustration of how generosity can often lead to unexpected rewards.
He also encourages readers to be bold in their deal-making, to make offers, even if they seem too low, because you never know what a seller might accept. He believes that many people miss out on great deals simply because they're afraid to ask.
It's about overcoming that fear of rejection, of putting ourselves out there and seeing what's possible.
And he suggests a strategy that I find particularly clever. Look for people who want to buy first, and then find someone who wants to sell.
It's a brilliant way to create value by connecting buyers and sellers, facilitating transactions that benefit everyone involved.
He also stresses the importance of being a good learner, especially in today's rapidly changing world.
Because knowledge is constantly evolving, right? What worked yesterday might be obsolete tomorrow. So how do we cultivate that mindset of continuous learning?
He encourages us to be curious, to ask questions, to seek out new information and perspectives. He believes that the more we learn, the more we earn.
It's about investing in ourselves, in expanding our knowledge base and skill set so we can adapt to new challenges and capitalize on emerging opportunities.
And he shares a story about how he once bought a house for a steal simply because he was paying attention, he was actively looking for deals, and he was prepared to act quickly when the right opportunity presented itself.
It's about being proactive, being resourceful, and being willing to seize the moment when it arises. He also emphasizes the importance of finding your own niche, of specializing in an area that you're passionate about and where you can excel.
He believes that this focused approach allows you to develop a deep level of expertise, which can translate into a significant competitive advantage.
It's about becoming an expert in your field, the go-to person that others seek out for advice and guidance.
Now, throughout the book, Kiyosaki returns to this idea of heroes. And it might seem a little out of place in a book about finance, but it's actually quite profound.
It is. He encourages readers to find role models who inspire them, who embody the qualities they want to cultivate in themselves.
He shares how, as a kid, he idolized baseball players like Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. He knew their stats, their stories, their paths to success, and he used their examples to motivate himself, to push himself to be better.
It's about finding inspiration from those who have already achieved what we aspire to, who demonstrate that it's possible to overcome obstacles and reach extraordinary heights.
And he argues that this principle applies to the world of finance as well. He encourages readers to study the strategies and mindsets of successful investors like Warren Buffett and Donald Trump, to learn from their experiences and model their approaches.
It's about finding mentors, even if they're not directly accessible to us, by studying their books, their interviews, their life stories.
Now, one last point that Kiyosaki emphasizes throughout the book is the importance of teaching.
Because knowledge is meant to be shared, right?
Yeah.
It's through teaching that we solidify our own understanding and empower others to grow.
Exactly. He believes that the more we teach, the more we learn. And he encourages readers to share their knowledge with others, to mentor those who are coming up behind them.
It's about creating a ripple effect of financial literacy, of empowering others to take control of their finances and create a better future for themselves and their families.
He shares a saying he heard years ago: God does not need to receive, but humans need to give. And he believes that this principle applies to all aspects of life, including finances.
It's about recognizing that giving and receiving are interconnected, that by sharing our abundance, we create a more equitable and prosperous world for everyone.
And with that, I think we've covered the essential building blocks of Kiyosaki's philosophy. From confronting our financial fears to embracing the power of corporations, from mastering the art of deal-making to finding our own unique path to wealth creation, Kiyosaki provides a roadmap for anyone seeking to break free from the rat race and achieve true financial freedom.
It's a bold vision. And while not every piece of advice might resonate with every listener, there's no denying that Kiyosaki's work is a powerful call to action, urging us to question our assumptions, challenge the status quo, and step into our full potential as financial architects of our own lives. And one of the most powerful ways he drives this home is by weaving these financial lessons together with, like, personal development. He's not just saying, go make money. He's saying, understand yourself, your values, your goals, and use financial freedom as a tool to build the life you truly want.
It's about aligning your financial goals with your life's purpose. It's about recognizing that money is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or ill. It's up to us to define our values and wield that tool responsibly.
And that's what he gets into in that section on finding your path. It's about so much more than just picking a career that pays well. It's about aligning your work with your passions, your values, and your unique contribution to the world.
Exactly. He encourages readers to ask themselves some really big questions. What are you passionate about? What problems do you want to solve? What impact do you want to have on the world? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential for anyone who wants to create a life of purpose and meaning.
Because otherwise, it's easy to get caught up in the rat race, chasing someone else's definition of success.
Absolutely. And to illustrate this idea of finding your path and leveraging your efforts, he tells a story about two water carriers, Ed and Bill.
Oh, this is a classic. I think this story should be required reading for anyone who feels stuck in a rut.
It's so simple, yet so profound. Ed, the hardworking water carrier, is content to do things the traditional way, hauling buckets of water back and forth all day long. He's making a living, but he's also trapped in a cycle of endless toil.
And then there's Bill, who disappears for a while, and when he returns, he's not carrying buckets anymore. He's built a pipeline.
Exactly. And that pipeline is the game changer. It allows Bill to work less, earn more, and provide a more consistent and efficient source of water for the entire village. It's a powerful metaphor for finding leverage, for creating systems that work for us, not the other way around.
It's about working smarter, not just harder. And it reminds us that sometimes the most significant breakthroughs come from challenging our assumptions and exploring unconventional solutions.
He's encouraging us to be the architects of our own financial destinies, to design systems that generate income even while we're sleeping, to create true freedom and abundance in our lives.
And he doesn't stop at building one pipeline, right? He encourages us to diversify our income streams, to create multiple pipelines so we're not reliant on just one source of income.
Exactly. It's about creating a portfolio of assets, of income-generating ventures that provide both financial security and the freedom to pursue our passions.